Kier Starmer is going to buy 800 houses with taxpayers' money and give them to illegal migrants and fake refugees. It's part of his pledge to put fewer people in hotels. I think he may have slightly misunderstood the point we were making. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe, hit the bell notification icon. It's the best way to absolutely guarantee you get all of my videos as soon as they are released. Well, Kier Starmer, I think, has really attempted to flannel the British public, hasn't he? Because he said he was going to cut the number of migrants in hotels and he was going to cut the number of migrants illegally crossing the channel in small boats. And his solution to that so far has been to buy houses so they're not technically in hotels anymore, and to fly people directly from their country of origin to the United Kingdom so they don't travel over in small boats. I think the point that I was making, and I think the point that you were making in all of these cases, was not that we were particularly offended by dinghies and hotels. We were offended by the sheer number of people coming to the United Kingdom. Illegally, it was 56,000, but net now is about 1 million a year. Even if Rachel Reeves gets away with her housing targets, which I don't believe she will, we would never, ever benefit from it because they will all go to migrants. Now, I want to explain, before I go through the migrant thing, and tell you an amazing story about a hotel in Skegness. But before I do that, I want to just give you the Rachel Reeves plan on housing, which obviously has been backed up by the rest of the government. So essentially, what she announced was that there was going to be all this new house building on the Greenbelt. Okay, fair enough. Well, I'll be honest with you, you may well like the Greenbelt, but we are where we are in terms of the fact that we've got all these people in the country now. We're going to have to put them somewhere. So she said that basically 60% of housing will go to people that buy them and 40% will go on social housing. Now, why don't I make the mathematics really, really simple on this and say it's 50-50? What that means is, if you want to buy one of these new houses, you buy one for yourself and one for an illegal alien. That is it. 50-50, call it. It's not exactly right, but 60-40 is similar to 50-50. And so you may end up spending, say, £500,000 on a house for which you get a house that costs 250 grand to build, and you give a 250 grand house to the bloke next door and some family move in. Now remember, the plan to prohibit terrorists from living next door to you is not going to exist in social housing. Therefore, it could well happen. Can you imagine the insult you would find if you and your family were to buy two houses and end up living next door to Shamima Begum, who'd been given the house to reward her for her efforts bullying, harassing the people of Syria? But I also want to tell you a little bit about some of the statistics. Nigel Farage has now said that 1,000 people have arrived in the past 3 days. That's 35,000 so far this year and 6,000 since Labour came to power. By the way, it just seems like Labour's been in for ages, but they actually haven't. This government's so tired and worn out. But I want to also talk to you now about a little hotel, and you're going to be absolutely stunned by this story. This is a story of a hotel in Skegness that refused to bring asylum seekers and migrants in. I'll put a link in the description to what they're now doing. This family have now got an Alice in Wonderland themed hotel called the Hatters Hotel in Skegness, and it's basically gone bust. And I'll tell you why it's gone bust. Because, first of all, they were asked to put migrants in and they refused. But then the council trebled their business rates, virtually bankrupting the company. They're now having a raffle to give the hotel away because they're struggling to sell it. I think that that is a remarkably bad thing. By the way, I made the point that maybe they shouldn't sell it and we should have a migrant hotel that we secretly own so we can watch what the government's up to and effectively go undercover. But of course, as was pointed out to me, what they do with these hotels is sack all the staff, change all the locks, make sure the owners don't come in and bring in their own home office staff so nobody knows what goes on there. So you can't actually penetrate and find out what is taking place. Absolutely astonishing. But of course, we talked about the hotel in Datchet, which is near me, near Windsor, where the local economy has been decimated because that vibrant little hotel was first of all damaged by COVID and then is full of migrants and asylum seekers. What is our country coming to? when we can't look after our own homeless people, but we can look after others. I'll put another link in the description, by the way, to Jess, Jess Gill, who works on my TV show. She came on the show on Thursday night and talked about the fact that she had volunteered for a homeless shelter when she moved to London. She's just come from Bolton, but now goes to King's College London. Anyway, she went to the homeless shelter for the interview and discovered that the homeless shelter was only open to homeless refugees and migrants. And she said the women in charge were very posh and pious and all this sort of thing. Unbelievable. So there's where we're at. We are now filling up our hotels. We are now filling up all of our accommodation, and we're now buying houses for these illegal migrants. What we need to do is start sending them back. And I'll tell you what's now going on in in Sweden. Amazing that I get the two mixed up these days, isn't it? Okay, well, what's going on in Sweden is, first of all, they're now saying, look, if you're a refugee and your country is now safe, it's time to go home. If the immediate problem has passed, it's time to go home. And I keep talking about little Moldova. And the reason I keep talking about little Moldova, and if you've heard it before, I apologise for being repetitious. Moldova had no refugees whatsoever because it was the poorest country in Europe until the Ukrainian war. Obviously now Ukraine is the poorest country in Europe. And the reason why Moldova in the end got lots of refugees, it's got a population of like 3 million or something, and 350,000 Ukrainians came to Moldova. It was the country per capita that received more refugees in the first year of the Ukrainian war than any other country on earth. And why is that interesting? The reason that people went to Moldova was because many Moldovans can also speak Russian and Ukrainians can speak Russian. The reason they went to Moldova was because it was the nearest safe country. Genuine refugees do not say, oh, you know, Dubai seems nice this time of year, or perhaps we should go to Tokyo. What they do is they cross over the border and they go to the nearest safe place. Now, for most Ukrainians, that was places like Chisinau, Moldova, or Krakow, Poland, or places like that. For some of them, the nearest safe place was with relatives, perhaps in Gloucester or Slough, which is where there's large Eastern European populations. But my point is this. The vast majority of Ukrainian refugees were women and children that came across the border and stopped as close to the border as they could. That's why they went to Moldova, even though it was poor. It didn't cross their mind to say, oh, Berkshire's richer than Moldova, therefore we want to go to Berkshire. They said, we want to be as close to our menfolk as possible, and we want to be ready to return home. Now, as it happens, Moldova has had to move a lot of people on simply because you can't have 10% of the population refugees and actually continue to function as a relatively poor country. But that's the only reason that they're not in Moldova. It's because Moldova was deluged, and Poland will now have to build, I think, some like 30 primary schools for the people that it's taken. And compare and contrast that with the Afghans, compare and contrast that with the Albanians, compare and contrast that with the Eritreans and the Somalians who've shopped around the world for wherever they want to go. And I think it's time that we follow Sweden's example and we start to say, I'm sorry, your country is now safe, it's time to go home. I think that that is the only appropriate thing, because I'll tell you, if we continue with what we're doing, the housing crisis is going to plunge our people into even further poverty. Can you imagine when you need to buy your first home for your family, having to buy two and giving the other to Shamima Begum for free? Until next time, goodbye.